Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Now, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. We are into the final stages of our season 2. Can you believe it, Paul? We've already had 9 conversations and we're going to round it off with 3 more.
Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
Absolutely unreal. But it's I think one of the things I've been really enjoying about this season is I think we've hit our stride in terms of conversation. The feedback from people is actually that the production value is quite good. So I think it's kudos to us and to AI for assisting us in making the presentation, the sound, the visuals. So we actually don't have anyone on the production team to thank, like the late Toy Show.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to thank Andrew as one of the first. I'd like to thank Paul. But yes, it's great feedback so far. And I think part and parcel of what makes this enjoyable for us is knowing that you, the listener, is taking the time out of your day, whether you're stuck in traffic, whether you're on a run, or whether you're in the office and just trying to escape and get your ideas flowing. And we're always very grateful for people listening in. So today we're going to take a little bit of a different tact. And I'm going to ask Paul 3 questions. He doesn't know what the 3 questions are. And the idea is to just get an insight into what's brought Paul to this point, maybe some other ideas. Nothing offensive for anyone, don't worry. And we're not going to ask him what flavor ice cream is his favorite because we don't want to lose listeners. And we'll kick it off from there and hopefully you enjoy. Paul, question 1. What's a belief you once held as an absolute truth about business or life that you now think was complete nonsense? And what changed your mind?
Having to work hard.
Oh,
So, yeah, thinking I had to work all the hours God sends and be working really hard and, yeah, just constantly banging the drum. And what I've learned since is the complete opposite to that. Actually, believe it or not, yeah.
do nothing.
Do nothing. It all comes. Yeah, that's what comes to mind. Yeah.
And so what brought you to that? What was it that you tried and burnt out, or was it that you tried and you thought there has to be a better way?
Probably all of the above, as well as, yeah, okay. So when I set up my own business in 2001, I did what pretty much everybody else does in terms of going to networking events, being seen out there. I've done events as in trade events, brochures, and marketing. I did pretty much what everybody else does. And the results were abysmal, absolutely abysmal. So I said, no, there has to be a better way. So that's when I started researching over in the States primarily, because in business at that time they tend to be a bit ahead of Ireland. And I learned about internet marketing from that perspective. So then I got involved in that aspect of it, applied what I learned from internet marketing and email marketing, which was being used for products, and I used that for services to see whether it would work or not. And it was phenomenal, absolutely, like it skyrocketed the business. So it got to a point that I didn't have to attend any networking events, didn't have to go to any trade shows or anything like that at all. All the clients came to me. And so that removed all that kind of work in a business. And then I changed what I was doing in the business and how I worked with clients. Because again, I started off doing what everybody else does, billing by the hour, billing by the day, and all that kind of stuff and so on. I said, I'm not going to do this. So I changed that completely around, and everything that I did in the business that was completely opposite to what the mainstream does worked. Then I would always be analytical, so I'd always go back over what was actually delivering the results. And it was funny because I don't know whether I think I shared with you before. So I got to a point whereby I took every half day on a Friday and I used to go horse riding. And every single time I used to go horse riding, I would come back and be a whole lot of business. So either new clients inquiries or confirmations of proposals as such that had gone out to clients and all that kind of thing. And it was a realization of actually, do you know, because I had a date in front of me. Like I said, hang on a minute. Okay, so the less I do, the more I get. And then I looked at mindset and I researched a huge amount into that. And one of the first books I came across was The Power of the Subconscious. part of the subconscious mind. Can't remember. I think the author is Murphy. I can't remember his first name. And that was my first introduction into mindset and the power of the mind. And it just exploded from there in terms of, okay, if I change my mindset in relation to how I approach business, how I approach business development, and all that kind of side of things, what kind of results would I get? And that just exploded. And now I do, maybe it's just because I'm really lazy. I actually do really, I do less, but I only do what I really love to do. So I'm choosy over the projects that I work with, or the clients I work with and the projects I work on. Very choosy about that. I'm choosy about the work I do within the business itself, but I'm not going because I don't have to be going 40, 60 hours a week. And this is, so really what I do is I explain to my clients what I do so that therefore they can take it on board as well. And they invariably come around the same kind of thinking that they don't have to be working in an office 40, 60 hours a week. They can actually achieve an awful lot more results and by actually doing less. So that was the biggest one for me.
It sounds so counterintuitive when you say it out loud, though.
I know,
It's
yeah, it
like
sounds weird, doesn't it? But then again,
people being
everything about
busy.
me is weird anyway, isn't
No,
it?
but I mean, it's yeah, as well. It's when you
Let's not
you
add to
heard it
that.
here first, listeners. You heard it on say Paul admitted to being weird. If anything for a weak point, he's a big weirdo. But look, I think the funny thing is we're all weird. You're just admitting to it. Like
Yeah,
it,
exactly, yeah.
like it, and I find that so funny because I think when you look at what we challenge and the ideas and what is considered a nonsense now is it's the classic thing of if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got, or get whatever
Mm,
the phrase is.
mm,
But or the other thing, play silly games, get silly prizes. What's funny is we all know that there's a historic route that people have gone through. When you think of the industrial age and when you think of the role of Henry Ford made a business work by any, you can have any color as long as it's black, and it was a manufacturing game. It was they take less time to dry, you can get it out faster, and that was where you had bodies in a warehouse building and putting it together. In the grand scheme of work, was he the one putting them together? No. So the concept of he may have not worked all the hours that you assume,
mm.
but the hours he deployed on the work were the ones that were the most effective.
Yeah,
So when you correlate that to what you look at doing when it comes to your time and why you do it, for someone who's factually driven, let's say, they might kind of go, I need someone. We all have these people around us, Musk and whoever else, and he like sleeps under his desk and he spent 40 grand on a bed in the back of the office so he can stay there all the time or whatever. And I think that nowadays is it's either becoming hollow where people are seeing past it or it's no longer something people aspire to be. And I'm seeing it now. And it's funny, even on the likes of Reddit, I was going around a few different threads and you can see people asking the question of the forum, but also their life, which is I'm at X stage of life, I'm doing this particular job. Yes, I make great money, but I hate it. So there's the concept that they've been taught work hard, bring a spare shirt, sleep under the desk, someone will promote you, you'll make money, and everything's going to be okay.
yeah, and I rally against that.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
how many people do that? And we said this before, and we slightly joked about it on LinkedIn being a new version of RIP.ie, and it's no disrespect to those who have passed away. But I see that and I look at it and I think, okay, how long did they work? What did their kids really think? What did their family? Was he a keen fisherman or was she a keen driver? Or was all these things that you imagine, and then it's one post and that's it. And maybe because I'm sensitive to that, I think I want every day to be unique,
mm,
interesting. I want to give it my all in whatever way that means to me. So some days is going all out, working hard. Other days is taking stock and enjoying certain things. But I think when you talk about it now, you'll have someone that's sitting somewhere. And I think at my stage of life, it's someone who's put in the hard yards, 15 years in a company, and maybe some of the top tier companies that promise you progression. And progression is such a dangerous word because it shows you this kind of ladder, but it doesn't show you what's on each rung, like the price you pay and what you're
yeah,
stepping on.
yeah.
So it says, here's the ladder, but by the way, you're going to be stepping on personal time. You're going to get 2 weeks of the new baby, but you're not going to get any more. You're going to plan to take a holiday, but then it's going to be dangled over your head. They're
Mm,
going to give you more money, but because your lifestyle is so good, you need more to be able to keep keeping up with some plonker who lives next door to you and goes skiing 4 times a year. Like, nothing wrong with skiing. I know we both like
yeah,
skiing.
yeah,
That's not the point, though. It's when you think of the practicalities, is that's what you're railing against, rather than just the concept of work. Don't work hard. It's not a case of be lazy,
yeah,
sit at
yeah,
home,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
and get the dole. It's literally a case of there's another way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that struck me going back many years was so my dad worked in Post and Telegraphs. That was Post and Telegraphs at the time, then became Telecom Air, and then it became something else and whatever it is called now. Air, I think it's just called now. but he worked so he entered when he was a teenager, became an electronic engineer, worked his way up through the organization, and never ever took 1 day sick in his whole life. Never took 1 day sick off the job, and all he got at the end was a framed certificate to say, "Congratulations, you've now completed X number of years." I have a photograph of it, but I can't remember how many years was on the certificate, and that was literally it. And I said, "I'm not doing that. There's no way I'm doing that." But I've seen it so many time and time again and I would have come across clients where they've climbed that corporate ladder and they sacrifice so much, and either they get a wake up call or realization, or they'd be made redundant, and they're then okay, so where do I go now? They've invested so much in literally in that one company or that one career, and they're trying to find themselves in some respect, but also trying to find what their next step is.
It's that, and it actually it's quite stark when you mention your dad, and you think of there's your certificate that that really hits me right there. And the funny thing is, it's not about someone else will take great pride in that. It's not that someone isn't. This is the case. We're not saying it's an either or, but I'm seeing now the story people were either told or the template people were given. They did what they were supposed to do. They filled it out. They kept inside the lines. They colored the way they were meant to, whatever it may be. And then there's a stage where they're kind of go, the picture is like three-quarters of the way finished, but I don't know why I don't like this picture anymore. Because in, but they did the thing they thought they were meant to do. And I think the difficulty is people nowadays aren't being armed with the opportunity to reflect and challenge. Because obviously you're not encouraged to challenge anything nowadays. If you challenge things, you're outside the lines and it's you need to conform. But the thing that fascinates me is that everyone at some stage in their life, whether they have an illness, whether they get to a certain age where they're in a chair looking at the window and reflecting on a point, they will have a moment in time where they say, what was all that about? Whether it was a decision, whether it was going out for dinner, overpaying for a car, it doesn't matter. All of these things will hit people. But when you think of age, you think that there's a point where people then won't be able to do anything about it. And then it just becomes almost this internal prison of shouldas and wouldas and couldas, but they didn't.
Yeah. But the biggest thing for them is, for people in that position, is what are they willing to give up? And will they actually give it up? And a lot of the time is the golden handcuffs. The pension fund is big, the salary is big. They can't enjoy the holidays that they do get anyway because it takes them 2 weeks just to decompress.
Yeah.
So it's what are they actually willing to give up? And will they make that choice? And I've come across so many that don't actually, they know they want it, but they won't make the choice.
Yeah.
But invariably,
Hard to choose your
you
heart.
know what's going to happen there anyway. But yeah, so would you rather kind of change what you're doing? And yeah, okay, the sacrifice is, but then again, it depends on who's in your circle and who you're willing to listen to. So if your family members aren't supportive, or your friends aren't supportive, or you may need a new circle of friends, that's the other side, and that is what happens. It's like we've had conversations along those lines in the past before. Because you just don't fit into a particular clique or clique. How do you pronounce it?
You say click. Don't ever say click again, Paul. I think that's official. I think there's a cream. Or is that
I,
Finnies?
I thought I was getting a stroke there.
At least you didn't emphasis the wrong syllable, so you're fine.
But yeah, so because you don't fit in, you invariably end up getting a new circle of friends.
Yeah, do you know what though? I think the difficulty that people find, and this is where I only said it to my wife today, was I was looking at the dynamics of what's happening with the market. Property is always a point of contention for a lot of people. What I love about what I do is I take that consultant advisory role, which is people, and property just happens to be the medium, let's say.
Yeah,
But when I think of the opportunity I have to do anything I want at any given stage, I could decide to transition my skill set into anything tomorrow.
yeah,
And I think the lesson I've learned over the last 5 years is I can do anything I want, and it's being willing to take that chance of seeing where it goes. But the other version of that is someone who doesn't do that, and then they let someone else do it. So they get, let's say, a pension, they get a job, whatever money, whatever it may be, and the other side of that coin is that you're then letting it play out. So the payment you're taking is the payment to forego that risk, that
yeah,
perceived risk, because it's
yeah,
still a risk, because you're letting someone else decide your future.
yeah,
And it baffles me as well when I look at it, and I think every day is an opportunity to do whatever you want. Like, how many people step outside their door, they put on their shoes the same way, and they always turn left?
mm,
As in, let's say they're getting the dart or getting in the car.
yeah,
People spend decades of their life going outside, jacket, and they turn left. What if you turned right? Like, what if you just like, right could be a dead end, but you can climb a wall and you can figure a way. And I think when you think about it, it sounds contrary or it sounds arbitrary, but part of life is trying that unique what could happen. I haven't a clue where it's going to go, but I'm going to give it a go. But the perceived safety of going to the same location every day of the week means that that's going to be me now for the rest of my life. It doesn't mean that you can't be in a position, it doesn't mean you can't be employed and be entrepreneurial. But I think it's more, I'd love to see people challenge the concept of why they do something. Like, why do we always go on holidays to this place? We've always gone there, but I
Yeah.
don't really like it. Like, why do you have everyone over at Christmas? Oh, that's just what we do. Why? Why is that? I don't, and it's not about not being kind to people, but equally with friends, I look at it and I would be very open and saying I'm in a huge transitional period when it comes to friends because I suppose part of what I do is I have to say, if I was to pat myself on the back, very non-Irish of me to not be self-deprecating, but I've continued to hone my mindset. And I think I've continued by virtue of challenges, adversaries, is it
You
anniversary
can't
or
put those words either.
adversaries? Join us next week on Grammar with Paul and Andrew, where we talk you through from A to Z. But the reason I say that is that I've always had to be self-reflective because I haven't had a HR department to go to. I haven't had someone to talk certain things through with it relative to being in an office or a friends group. And I think when you look at that, I'm also happier than I've ever been because I don't just want to go through the motions of having a pint with someone and talking about the weather. If I don't want to talk about the weather, what
Hmm.
if I just want to get into a great conversation where they challenge me or vice versa? And you have to be okay with that too, because all parts of your life will be slotted in and out at different stages. And I think part of that at my stage of life is people, whether they admit to it or not, write themselves off and they go, this is it now. Pension's been topped up, making a few quid. I know how much a holiday costs. I know the guy in Weir's or whatever jewelers, and I want to get my whatever else. People have this idea of what they think it is, and then they just think they're just going to keep that particular frame of reference going. And I think
But
it's because they just,
yeah, but that's kind of like they're just clocking in the hours though.
yeah, everyone does that. I think a lot of people do that. Like you'll have people that say if someone loves what they do, I absolutely think it's so key that they pursue that. But I think you need to be empowered to pursue the stuff you want to do rather than,
Really? But they don't see time. Like I spend hours doing a certain thing and I get lost in it
mm,
because I love doing what I'm doing, as opposed to what you've just described, as just clocking the hours and saying
yeah.
I've got X number of years now to go before I get my pension,
Oh,
and I get this tax-free lump sum at the end of it, and this is what I'm going to do when I retire. And Jesus, yeah,
I'm getting sweats
go
just
there.
thinking about that. I
Oh my
think I need
God.
to go do something. Oh my God. Like it's fascinating to me, but I think it's look, you can talk about this all day, but the reason I love these kind of conversations and getting someone when they're listening to this to just it could be one element of their life that they challenge. Like why do they put up with the friend or family member that doesn't treat them the right way? Why do they go to the place they don't want to go to? Why do they surround themselves with certain people? And I always say to people, like what I love about what I do is I get to meet interesting people with great mindsets.
Hmm.
And someone last week said, and how do you keep meeting so many people and connect to them? I said, I mentally have a bus stop in my mind. And if I sit at the bus stop and sit beside a person waiting for the bus and I moan about tax, the weather, life, and everything else getting me down, all I'm doing is filling this negative tank with all this stuff. And there's plenty of people to do that.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is you have to go looking for the right people to sit beside. And when you do that, you then realize that there's such a plethora of mindset, concepts. There's ideas to beat the band, by the way. Like everyone has ideas. But I think if you surround yourself with people who empower you and are happy to see you win,
Hmm.
that's the big thing I find. People have this concept that if I win, I'm taking something out of the bucket of success for Paul. I'm like, no, your bucket's there, it's full. You
Yeah.
go get it.
Yeah.
And I love being happy for other people's success. And I
Yeah.
met someone I was in school with last week, and great, like a number of successful people in the school. Don't have to see them for the last 20 years. I don't pretend that we're all best friends. That's not what it is. But from afar, I will always think it's amazing when I see a good news story about them. Quick message to say, how amazing is that? And I'd like to think I'm the rule of people that give them the kudos and well done, but I would say I'm probably the exception. That there's a number of people who say, instead of how can I be like him, it's like how can I get him? That can I wait to see such and such happen to him or her.
Yeah.
But I digress. Anyway, I think that mindset piece is so key. On to our question too, Paul.
No, hang on a minute.
Oh, oh, oh,
Public
yeah.
yours.
Oh, thought I get away with it. You heard that here first, listeners. We're turning into an investigative journalist now. Jane, thanks a million, Paul. I think my one is probably what I learned, and it's very recently I learned was actually that I had to be someone else to be successful. And I think that was one that I think mentally I used to have this construct in my head, and I know we've talked through it about it's funny, like when people think of movies and references and things, I use Cool Runnings. So anyone who listens to this and hasn't seen the Disney movie Cool Runnings, firstly go and see it. But if you have seen it, you'll know that it's about a Jamaican bobsled team, and the leader of the team tries to emulate. I don't know whether it's the Swiss team or the East German team at the time, because it was in the 90s and the wall was still up. And they were basically, when they're on the whatever the hell thing is called, the bobsleigh, they're saying eins, fein, drei, and they're using the kind of language of copying someone else's thing. And by the end of the movie, they end up having this cool Jamaican rhyme that they end up doing it just the way they do it, if you know
Yeah,
what I mean.
yeah,
But the reason I love that as an example is I started off, and I think I spent a lot of my life kind of going, this particular person or people has this metric of success. Ergo, I have to be this particular person to have this metric of success.
yeah.
And I realized that first things first, as soon as I kept trying to be the person I'm not, it was literally like putting on this giant jacket and you just keep adding weights to it. I'm like every day it's okay, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be that person. And I'm throwing on this expectation, this fatigue, and I'm starting the day almost 40 or 50 pounds heavier in mind and in body. And I felt that everything was a chore. And then the more I began to look at not judging someone else, but one of the great things I learned from you, Paul, was that everything is both sides. And I look at that, that is such a key thing of how I view life, but everything is always both sides. So when I saw these people that I emulated and I thought it, I had to be like them, I realized that there's lots of parts of their lives that if I could give my version of it to them, they'd take it in a heartbeat. So then I was like, why don't I just take the bits of me that I like and I keep trying to enhance those, learn, always improve, always grow, still always going to make mistakes. That's part of life, but lean into the me in all of this.
Mm.
And that was the big thing for me. So it was that I could be myself and still grow.
So what's the question or the prompt that you would give to somebody else that's in a space that they're living life according to others? What's the prompt that you'd give them in order for them to reflect on? Because what comes to mind is a lot of them probably don't even know who they are. So what would you say to them?
It's hard to think about an actual phrase that doesn't come across condescending. That's the
Mm.
way it's almost like when someone doesn't know how to talk to you at a funeral. Some people just need a hug and to be told it's crap. Some people need lasagna. And
Ham sandwich.
yeah, I take a ham sandwich any day of the week.
That must be an Irish way.
Of course, absolutely. But I think if I was to say it to someone, I think I would probably try and get them to deconstruct the reason why. So go why 10 times over almost. So,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
what is it you're doing? Okay, why? Who is it you emulate? Okay, why? And then almost try and get them to see both sides of all of that. And that for me was the biggest thing. So anyone who's listening to this, the one of the and I've learned many lessons from Paul, and I'd be very open and honest about the role he's played in my business, because my business is no longer the what I started out with for great reasons. And I think that's part of the magic of this journey of exploration, which is life in general. But one of the great things to make me under or help me understand how to neutralize or become objective with every situation is it's always both sides. So if you do someone a favor, it's not that you're better than them and you're doing something, there's something in it for you. If something negative happens, you may learn a lesson or appreciate whatever. So there's always both sides. And I think if I got someone to understand that a little bit more, they may get a little bit more of an understanding as to what maybe makes them tick. But I will also preface it with you do have to step out on that virtual cliffs of Moher all on your own and figure it out as well. Like you have to explore what it's like to be uncomfortable. You have to explore the things that may have been the foundations for your life. And that's a big I'm 40 and I'm going to be 40 in 12 months at the end of December. And or is it 39 in total? I can't remember. The lie just keeps growing. But the reason I say that is that, and I continue to realize how much I don't know. And I think that's the freedom in life because it's always moving, it's always changing. And I think it's always all to play for. And I used to think that I had to have certain things figured out by a certain way, but that's because I was picking up someone else's chart and I was trying to map out my life based on someone else's trajectory. And once I let that go, that was just literally, and it wasn't overnight. It was the same how it landed on me, which was a little weight got taken off one thing at a time. And if I was speaking with someone, I think I'd probably just try and prod a little bit from a place of kindness as to who they're doing it for.
Yeah, it's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at the stuff.
Not
That's
bad. Yeah, you're not bad. Yeah, you're coming along.
wife got me a word of the day dictionary toilet paper, so it's great every week. Today's word is facetious. Don't ask me to spell it. Right, Paul. So you got me with the second question, or the first question. So we're going to ask you the second one. If someone followed you around for a full week with a camera, that'd be your idea of hell.
No.
What would surprise people the most about how you actually live and work?
That I don't do anything. Give me the second part of that question again. If they followed me around for a week, God help me, yeah.
If someone followed you around for a full week with a camera, what would surprise people the most about how you actually live and work?
Jeez, that's a good question.
Sure, I said it, of course it is.
Yeah. I don't know whether it would surprise them or not. I think I would like to think that they would see how calm I am through everything.
Ooh,
So whatever stuff comes up, I'm just calm. I don't react to anything. I know that's an absolute, but I don't react I react to very little. And what I mean by that is, so if something negative was to happen, I don't catastrophize it and I don't build castles. I just, okay, so that's the way it is. So let's know what we need to do. So I'm very tempered in my responses. So that's one thing I would suspect. The other thing is I'm very disciplined in respect of, I want to get different projects done and I want to get work done. For example, my book, I'm trying to get that finalized. By the time this recording comes out, it should be published. So that's my next book. That's book five. So I'm disciplined in wanting to get projects done, and nobody needs to prod me or motivate me or all that kind of sort of things in order to get things across the line. So people would perceive, okay, he's got a good work ethic. And it's funny because my two lads are exactly the same. They have a very strong work ethic, but we spend our time on work that's of value as opposed to work just for the sake of putting in the hours, which kind of follows on from the earlier conversation. They're the kind of things that come to mind. They probably find me quite boring, to be quite honest with you, but I am an accountant at the end of the day. I would do all random stuff, where I go for a walk or whatever. I don't, the only schedule I keep is a schedule for our client meetings. It's the only schedule I keep. All the other schedule is completely flexible outside of that. So I could do stuff during the week where most people would do it at the weekend. I'm completely flexible from that perspective. Meetings are the only thing that are cast in stone, if that makes sense, because it's a promise to somebody else.
what's very interesting what you said. First, you had to stop myself laughing because when you said you were calm in adversity, I was about to ask, what brand of horse tranquilizer do you use? But no, what's interesting about that? Has that always been your disposition, by the way? Or is
No,
that,
oh God, no, 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 absolutely not. No, no. I used to react quite, let's just call it, I would react quite significantly.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's such a political line to cover up the fact that you battered someone's head in or something.
Yeah. So I look at it when you're growing up with one of seven brothers, you'd respond in very different ways.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I'd be quite volatile from over in previous years. I would have been quite volatile to be quite honest with you. But that was more. It was pent up stress, pent up emotion, pent up. Partly not really enjoying what I was doing, partly not really being my authentic self, and so on. So there would have been a lot of factors to come into play from that side of things. And but actually, do you know what? It comes back to the old adage of, because I remember going back years and years, where I would have been of the viewpoint of, Jesus, if everybody else could change, life would be an awful lot easier. So it was
Yeah.
all about the external. It was all about how could everybody else change and so on. And it wasn't actually the realization, actually, as soon as I change, and it's only just changing perspectives. Once my perspective changes, the whole world changes. And that's phenomenal. So trying to not necessarily have expectations of other people, or not trying to, people are doing different things for different reasons. They've got a completely different perspective and perception of all the things that they do. We're all individually, in some respects, living our own life. But it's not about trying to control somebody else. It's actually just trying to, again, not about control us, but it's about knowing who we truly are and responding from a completely different place altogether.
See, it's a response from a completely different place that I think will hit people. It does for me because I think of the Like you said, the stimuli hasn't changed. Like obviously the
Mm.
world changes in general, but the actual biological stimuli of what makes you jump or what made you annoyed or the situation is just a different flavor, but the concept is the same.
Yeah.
When you change that internal reactionary piece, and what's ironic about it is oftentimes people write themselves off as like, oh no, it's just the way I am. I fly off the handle. I have to deal with it, or they'll blame technology and whatever. And there's a role to be played with that. But it is very interesting when you think of that perspective that you've again, and what's ironic, but when you watch any movie, when you look at, let's say, Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption, he was an impetuous youth who made a decision based on a volatile disposition, let's say.
Yeah.
When you think of any movie where the most dangerous guy in the whole movie is usually the most quiet, all these things you can see it. You got the main character. He's troubled, he's whatever. He doesn't really have much of a, you don't think he has much of a temper, but then someone steals his daughter and does something, and the rest of the movie, he just, or they kill his dog and he just loses the plot. So
Yeah.
I think that's all within us all the time in a
Yeah.
lot of
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think people sometimes write themselves, whether they consciously or unconsciously, go, Ash, that's me. That's the way it is. That's my version of whatever.
Mm.
Whereas when you are curious about it, you can then say, is there another way? So you probably just said, is there another way here?
Yeah. And yeah, so would have pursued an awful lot of other different things to find an alternative way.
And if someone was knocking around your house now with your permission, obviously they're not just hiding under your bed, would you tend to have certain things? You say your routine is quite flexible, but is there anything in your particular, let's say, unwritten rule that you still have to do? So do you still have to get your walk in? Do you still like to do, is there something that although it may not be scheduled, it's still a mainstay in what you do?
Probably the exercise is probably one of the ones that I would have to remind myself to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Because a lot of my activity is mind-based.
Yeah.
So I'm a lot in my mind. I'm a lot about thinking about clients, thinking about their businesses, thinking about what they're doing and all that kind of stuff and so on. So I'm in my mind an awful lot. And because of that, I'm in some respects, I forget about everything else.
Yeah. Cerebral.
Yeah. So that's where, yeah, there will be times I'd have to remind myself, do you know what? I haven't had a walk yet this week. So
Yeah.
I need to go for a walk. Those activities would strike me, but everything else I would just naturally do. As what people would say in terms of that's pursued the personal development space, there's things that they would have learned in relation to gratitude is one thing,
Mm.
meditation is another thing, journaling is another thing. All of those things, they don't fit into a routine, but I just naturally do them.
Yeah.
It's a bit like I don't even think about brushing my teeth in the morning. I just do it. And and it's not a task. It's just throughout the whole day, I'm actually giving gratitude because it's just the mode I'm in because literally there is so much to be grateful for. So it's how I'm being as opposed to I'm not doing any of those activities. I'm just
Yeah.
being that mode, if that makes sense.
Being versus doing. Yeah, it's a wonderful place because it's almost like trying to it's splashing yourself with water versus being in the pool. Oh, I nearly got knocked down. I should be grateful. Splash with water. I'm grateful that I'm alive. As opposed to waking up and going, I'm alive. I'm
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
just woke up in a warm bed. I
yeah.
got to choose to turn the hot water on. That's everything. And so
Everything.
much in so many ways. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So what would they be surprised at if they were following you around for the weekend or for a week?
I suppose how many hats I wear, but also the rhythm to my day as well. And I think this is the unique thing for me is that because I'm in and out of properties all day long, it tends to be a life event in someone's part of someone or a
Mm.
portion of someone's life when they're searching for something. It's almost as if, oh, we go to the shops and we'll have a look around. I have a real methodology as to how I do everything. And so when I'm dealing with people, like I had a couple of appointments this morning and I'm in and out, and I already know. I know the agent if it's an agent, and if it's on market, and if it's on off market, it's similar because I have a system of going through. I can evaluate it quite quickly, and I don't agonize and spend hours and days wishing I'd spent longer there. But I suppose probably the cusp of it all would be how often I'm alone. Would probably be something where people. So I'm almost like a store salesman. If someone had the camera, they're probably better off leaving it in my car, and then when I'm in the car, they'll hear me either listening to motivational audiobook, an interesting whatever classical music, or talking myself out of a problem mentally myself. But it's probably just the dynamics of what I do are so. Not, again, they're very flexible because you get some days where you're not viewing as much or not being as involved on the ground in the delivery of stuff. But I suppose everything that it's only when you meet someone outside of what I do and they say, well, you're doing a podcast, you have a newsletter, and you're buying property, and you're in Waterford last week, and you're going here, and then you're doing this, and then I saw you do, and it's like a lot of people like in it, I'm this, and it's this one line. Whereas if it's a bowling alley, I'm running across all the lanes all the time. And the odd time I hit a pin at the bottom. But I think that'd be the very simple way to put it. And like also, I think immense gratitude. Everything I do, I just thoroughly enjoy. And I think that's not that things aren't difficult, as in you have things that challenge you mindset wise or client wise, but everything is the messiness of getting the kids ready in the morning, the messiness of doing this, the joy of having a great conversation, the trust you get from someone who shares a contact with me to have a conversation to maybe help them. And that could be a small conversation that changes the trajectory of their lives in some small way. And then probably the amount of time, the amount to connect people. So a big part of what I would do would be connecting people with other people with no expectation, but I put the same vigor into that as I do my job. Because if I meet someone and I know they need to meet someone, it's knowing what they need and making sure it happens. And then I have a kind of a micro relaxation point where I send, okay, so if I have to connect Paul and such, they have to be connected. It has to be done the right way. It's not a case of here's Paul, here's such and such. It's there's the reason why I'm connecting the two of you, and then you can go and make music. And once that happens in my mind, it's almost like a disc in a diner going into the thing. So then that person makes their own music. I don't have to be on the playlist, but I love that. And
Yeah,
that's kind of part of it as well.
yeah.
So yeah, that'd be the best way to describe it.
If there's one thing that somebody could take away from observing your week that would make their life better if they were to incorporate it, what would it be?
So if I look at the mechanics, meditation and gratitude have been an absolute game changer for me. I think allocating the time is very easy to overlook yourself when you are a people person, and it's very easy to, I suppose, prioritize other things that you may deem more important in inverted commas. But the role of meditation, and I've now gotten it down where if it's 5 or 6 minutes of
Mm,
just that bit of time to decompress or to think or reflect or just have nothingness, that's a huge one for me because activity wise, I would assume I need to be doing something. But then I realized that 6 minutes almost opens up. It's like someone taking an elastic band in a positive sense and suddenly widening it. So I then have more to work with in my mind. Or let's say pushing a wall. If I
mm,
was to just push the wall and I get an extra 10 feet of headspace every time I do it, that'll be one. The gratitude for me is like every day I write down 7 things I'm grateful for. And it is grateful for the fact that I'm alive, my wife, my kids, food in the fridge. And it could be a little thing that I met someone that was interesting or whatever. That they're two big ones. And then also leaning into the messiness. I think handing my kids to someone to bring to school rather and forego the 40 minutes of running out the door. I forgot my shoes. She took this. I did that. Yes, it's crazy. Yes, it gets your adrenaline up. But I'm in the car with my kids and I'm listening to them. And it's like a blink of an eye and they just won't want to lift anymore. And that's the stuff that I try and prime myself for every day. So, and that's all stuff that's free. Like this is the stuff I say. It's the most overlooked, like an old crap journal. Not crap. An old journal. Pick a pen that you actually like to write with and give yourself 3 minutes to say something you're grateful for. It
mm.
doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah,
And oxygen is all around me now, but if I had difficulty breathing, you'd be damn sure I'd be grateful for oxygen if it was given back to me.
yeah,
And anyone who's listening to this, that's everything. And we overcomplicate because we think we need a bigger car, we need a bigger house, we need all of these things. I think, yes, there's elements of life that materialistically you can enhance your life in ways. But if that's your sole reason for doing stuff, you're missing the point because someone out there is sitting there with a cup of instant coffee and they're extremely grateful to have a bit of warmth in their hands and to be sitting looking at a nice view because that's all life really is. We complicate it because we're human beings and we're ridiculous. But that'd be the best way to describe it. I think keep it simple with those three.
yep. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thank you. So I passed that test finally.
We
When's
could
my certificate coming in the post?
Yeah.
Now, here's the last question. So, what's one decision you made in the last 5 years that scared the life out of you but changed everything?
Ooh.
You started working with me.
I can't think of anything. One decision that scared the life out of me. Nothing comes to mind immediately. And let's be
Oh,
honest. Yeah, that's a good thing and a bad thing. Like I'm immediately drawn to doing the biplane wing walk, but that's just an experience I wanted to do. Did it scare the life out of me? Yeah, absolutely did. Jeez, it terrified me when I was up there.
That's a huge one. Like you're glossing over standing on top of it. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's when you take those, like they look like the crop dusting planes for those who
Yeah.
aren't in the know. I'm probably butchering all the terms, but anyway, just if Michael O'Leary's listening, tell him to turn the volume down. But it's basically you strap yourself to the top of it, and then someone decides to throw you around the air upside down and all over the shop, and you pay them for the privilege.
I didn't even get a seat inside the plane.
Janie Mac, but like that's huge. And
Mm.
okay, so let's lean into this a little bit. So, what was it that drew you to it?
It's the experience, actually. It was like I saw a video on LinkedIn, and this has gone back a number of years ago. And it was literally that. It was a biplane wing walk, and
Hmm.
someone who just doing aerobatics in the air. And I said, that looks really cool. So then I started to investigate it and found a place in the UK that does it. And but then I realized that there's two different types of flight. So most people will do the lower level flight, which is, yeah, it's nice and easy. You go up like literally a few hundred feet and you're just flying around the air, being strapped to the top. But then the next level flight up is 4,000 feet, and that's when you're doing all the aerobatics in the air. So that one was mental. That was crazy. But my wife was so terrified that she wouldn't come with me. Yeah, so she was waiting for my phone call at the end when I landed on the ground to see whether it was still safe or not.
She's got masses on one line looking for a local
Exactly.
discount, and you on the other waiting to see if you've made it alive. Which one do you answer?
Yeah. But I suppose in hindsight, like it was, I've done some crazy stuff, like similar to that, but not as crazy as that. But I loved it, loved doing it, but also terrified at exactly the same time. And I've never been terrified in at other things, like jumping out of a plane never terrified me. But that terrified me. But I suppose the realization, and with all of these things, I think it's the realization of you realize how much you can actually do. And if you just push through that barrier of getting over the fear and actually just doing it, you'd be amazed at how much you can actually accomplish. And it's with everything else, like since then I've done abseiling down the tower in Smithfield. That was for charity. Hadn't done it before, so wanted to do that one. But every single one of the experiences, I'm able to recall them in my mind as if they only happened yesterday. And now, bear in mind, like that there's loads of stuff that I've forgotten and wouldn't be able to remember. Like my wife remembers everything for me, as I think most wives do. Do you
I can
remember that
attest to that.
time? So, but yeah, and that's why I'm so passionate about experiences, is because you never forget them. And the more you have, I think the more rich life is, really. That's just my view.
That's mad. When you think of a con like that particular concept of wine. You were struggling in the first 20 seconds. Yeah, nothing really comes to mind because I think you were leading into, what boardroom was I in where I had a tough conversation. Like, oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot. I paid to be outside an airplane. 4,000 feet, was it?
4,000 feet, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mother of pearl. No thanks. That'll be, I'll support you from afar. I'll share the video with other people, but I'm
Well,
not.
at least I can say that I'm part of the 1% of the global population that will do that.
Is it only 1%?
Tiny, tiny, probably even less than 1%. Yeah, yeah. That will actually do that level of flight. Yeah.
Really?
Mm. I must actually look up the stats, but they did tell us at the time it is for that second level flight where you're doing the
Yeah,
4,000 of the aerobatics, like literally it's tiny percentage that do it. Yeah, globally.
that's mad.
Yeah, yeah.
You should probably just introduce yourself to people like that. Paul Davis, biplane wing walker. Oh, hi, sorry, what did you say? Biplane wing walker.
Not for
I
that better
thought you were,
than Paul
I thought
Davis
you were a
accountant.
consultant. I'm a biplane wing walker first, and then I consult from the biplane. That's phenomenal.
What's your one?
Like it makes everything I seem to do so trivial when you think of what you did. I think it probably, if I was to look back now, it would probably be just setting out on the journey of creating my own business, not knowing what was to come, like not knowing what I was going to create. And I think I started it off from a place of curiosity, but also just that there was something there. It was an itch that needed to be scratched. And then I think of it now, and I'm completely at odds with the concept of what I would have started out. Because what I started out was general agency. You're in an office and someone says we're at a party. What does Andrew do? Bit of this, bit of that, bit of the other. And then I booked the trend of that. But then the more I lean into what I do now, the more I love it because it's like, I'm not going to diminish the role of property in people's lives. That's not the case. But I think when I realized the power and the potential of what I can do in people's lives. Property's like the tiniest drop,
Yeah.
and that for me. But I think it's maybe also that self-worth piece, that historic idea of wishing I'd known my exact route, how to become a director in XYZ company. But even at that, when I think of that terrifying, maybe naivety plays a big role in why we do things, being oblivious to what's to come. I wouldn't change it for the world though. And now my perception of everything, even a perceived challenge, is just, it's so incredibly different. And that's probably something I really enjoy. Yeah, that'd probably be it. Or maybe I suppose if I was thinking of it another tone. No, I think that'd be it. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question because it's funny. I had this few conversations along this lines, this
Mm.
line over the last number of weeks. When you started off your own business, did you, or do you even now, do you know you're going to be successful or do you hope you're going to be successful?
The only answer I could give you is that I knew there was more. And I couldn't tell you what. I knew that there was something there that I owed it to, whether it was myself or whatever it was, to explore what that would look like. But I also knew if I did what I always did, I would have then been not languishing, but I would have always known there was something. Like someone who says I could have played international rugby, or I could have been the fastest, whatever, and they never did, or they never were, they never tried. That was probably so. Whether I knew the best way to describe it, that's the best phrase. I think I knew there was more, and more was more to life, more to me, more to the situations that I used to either run away from or wish I didn't have to engage with, and then also more depth, not needing to make 250 grand every 15 minutes for my life to be worthwhile.
Mm.
And knowing all the other stuff was always going to come in its own way. If I won the lotto today, would I move house? Probably not. Would I buy a new car? Maybe, but I'm joking. No, I wouldn't. I'd probably just pay the mechanic to do everything I wanted with my current car. But no, I think no, I knew that there was more, and I couldn't put my finger on what that was.
Yeah, because it's interesting because there's a really big difference, but not many people get it. There's a big difference between knowing and hoping. No, and hence the reason I was asking you the question because it's actually very interesting. When you know something's going to happen, it's going to happen without a shadow of a
Mm,
doubt. It's like you take a deep breath. You know the air is going to come in. When you know you're going to be successful, and maybe even just a deep inner knowing that you just know, like what you described, there's more. So you have to pursue that route in order to follow through.
mm,
If you know you're going to be successful, you just know it's going to be success.
mm,
If there's any kind of level of doubt, and that's what hope is. If there's any level of doubt, I hope it's going to turn out, or I hope it's going to work, or I hope, yeah, I do get the business to the level I want. It's never going to get there. It's just hope. And I know it never is an absolute, but it's an awful lot harder for it to get there, to be that success when hope is present. So it's actually trying to shift from hope to knowing. And I've had quite lengthy conversations about that, just that one piece subject matter of hope versus knowing for people to really understand the difference. Yeah, so it's just interesting to see what your mindset framework was at the time.
yeah, I suppose no one ever knows what's going to happen, but if you get to deconstruct it, I suppose I don't ever. It's like someone says, "What do you want to be remembered by?" I say, I don't want to be remembered yet because I have a lot to do. So I don't want to be dead. But I do think that if there's something someone can take from this conversation, by the way, listeners, this was meant to be a short, quick, three questions and answers. So it turned into a longer, in-depth, more conversation. But the goal of these conversations is for us to learn more about ourselves in whatever way that means. And if there's one person listening now that found one of those questions thought provoking, scary, poignant, or it gives them the opportunity to sit down and just try this meditation malarkey, just try this noticing malarkey, as someone else might view it. I think it's probably a good point for us to say that what I mentioned about knowing there was more, we all have that in us. And I would encourage anyone just sit down and explore, be curious about what that might look like. I'm getting the nod of approval for Paul. So before he decides to not approve, we're going to end this episode. And thank you all for listening to another episode of Beyond Just Business. As always, if you've any questions, concerns, or topics you want to send us, email us in hello@beyondjustbusiness.com, or you can contact myself and Paul separately. If you've had an interest or if you have anyone in your network who may enjoy listening to this, please feel free to share it. We're always grateful of new subscribers, great reviews, amazing reviews are even better. We're not open for sponsorship yet, but keep listening and there's surely more to come. And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.